How you doing? This is Mark Koep from campgroundviews.com, and I've got a special guest here. His name is Joel. He's from Harvest Host, and I've invited him on to share with you what Harvest Host is. If you have never heard of it, it's a great concept, and I thought it'd be perfect to share with all of you. So Joel, thanks for coming on, and go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and Harvest Host.
Well, thank you, Mark. Appreciate you having me on. Harvest Hosts is a very cool program for RVers. We are a membership network of over 600 wineries, farms, breweries, distilleries, and an assortment of really other cool locations that invite self-contained RVers to camp overnight for free.
And so when you say that these are not campgrounds and RV parks, these are locations that may have, they don't have RV sites. What do they have in general? What's like the average place that people would end up staying at?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so we describe it as as the unique RVing experience. It is definitely not a replacement for traditional campgrounds. This is something to change it up a little bit, right? So here's a good example. A couple weeks ago, I went to a winery in Kansas off of Route 70 as I was driving to Colorado. You know, in Kansas, I typically stay at pretty copy and paste campgrounds. I usually pay like $50 a night, and it's fine, but it's not that exciting. So I stayed at one of the Harvest Host locations, which was a winery that offered this beautiful, just beautiful property, probably a couple thousand acres. They let me park in a really gorgeous area right by the vines and had this wonderful sunset. And it was great. And then I met the owners. They gave me a wine tasting. They actually gave me a tour of the property, showed me how they make their wines. And again, it's totally free as a member. And the idea is you give back a little bit to the local host. So I bought a couple bottles of wine to share with family and friends, but I still spent less than I would have at that traditional campground.
So, okay, so first off, you said winery and you said Kansas. So that kind of clues me in that you're very unique in nature. I mean, so tell me a little bit about that. How do you find hosts? How do you pick them? Is there a process, or do you just add anybody onto there?
No, it's a good question. So it's been 9 years in the making to get to our 600, and I think we're at like 35 hosts now. And it's a very curated process. We reject most applications because what we're looking for is something that's going to be really interesting for the members. And I can give you a couple of interesting examples. I pulled up our fact sheet here. So of the hosts, about half of them are wineries, breweries, and distilleries. And the breweries and distilleries are pretty unique too. This is a relatively new thing, but I've tasted some wonderful beers traveling around the country. In fact, I'm booking my trip right now to New England for the fall, and I'm staying in Maine, in a harbor at a microbrewery. And so I can actually see the water from my site and taste some amazing beer. So to your point, it's very unique. In addition to alcohol properties, we have museums and attractions. So I was looking through this list, and we've got a vacuum cleaner museum, a cog railway in Mount Washington, a couple
well,
of,
you need to stay there. If you've never been there, you need to stay there. Yeah,
so
the Mount Washington Cog Railway. Yeah.
Yep, that's a Harvest Host location. Yeah, so and actually,
that's amazing.
Isn't that awesome? So I'll be staying there as well. So it's a real assortment of interesting locations. And again, the idea is just to provide that unique RVing experience.
So you've got these unique locations, and so if first off, let's go from the perspective of some of our campers that are looking at this, and are more of our RVers. So they're thinking, when I'm going to drive 500 miles, I'm going to stop at a Walmart overnight or a rest stop or whatever. Could your locations fill in for that and act as an alternative to sleeping in a Walmart?
Yes, absolutely. And so, and you asked this earlier, and I apologize, I missed it, but most of our locations are dry camping. So this is a boondocking experience. Some of the hosts do provide water and electric and dumps, but not many of them. I mean, really what you're coming in for is a unique and beautiful location to park for the night. And yes, so in that case, oh my goodness, skip the Walmart parking lot for sure. And so this is absolutely a much better alternative to staying in some parking lot where you're going to be boondocking without a beautiful winery right beside you.
So obviously who is your audience? Who are Harvest Host members? Are they? I mean, if you could group them into one or two groups, who are they? Are they mostly retirees? Are they families? Who is it that's belonging to Harvest Host? And if they're watching this, who would be the perfect person or persons to join Harvest Host?
It's a good question. So, and I just looked through these statistics recently. So we have thousands of members from all over the country. And I think the reason they're all over the country is we have locations in Canada, Alaska, Baja, Mexico, and all the 48 lower states. So we're very evenly distributed with our locations. And as for the type of person that joins, the membership's only $49 a year, and that gets you unlimited access to all of these different hosts. And so because of that, it basically pays for itself in one night. And so when you look at the membership base, a double-digit percentage are retirees and full-timers who are living in their Class A's, having a great time. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have a lot of young people who are in Airstreams and travel trailers that are looking for interesting places to stay. And even if they only use it a few times in a year, you're already in the money. So I would say for anybody listening, we chose that price point of $49 pretty intentionally so that if you just use it one time, it's already a good program for you. And then you do need to remember, when you visit the hosts, you want to give back in some way, right? So, take a portion of that money you saved from a traditional campground and support the local business.
So that's important. And actually that brings up two questions. So I can't go on Google and find your locations that you typically, I'm not gonna be able to find these spots. And you had mentioned in a previous conversation we had about the marketing that you provide to these member resorts and how there's a little bit of some rules in place on your members and on the locations. Can you go a little bit into that for our viewers?
Yes. Yeah. So I think the biggest rule is really the camper's rule in general: leave no trace. And so, when you visit these hosts, I like to say, pretend you're visiting your grandma, right? You wouldn't show up at your grandma's house and hang your laundry out to dry and pee in her backyard. And you want to come in and leave with everything you brought. And so because of that, one of the requirements for the program is a self-contained unit. So a bathroom inside, some ability to keep water inside your unit, cook inside your unit, because these are active businesses, and so they don't want campers showing up, right? They want people to come in, and look professional.
Yeah. So your members, I mean, when they're joining, I guess that brings up a question: have you ever kicked anybody out of the program? Has anybody violated those terms where you get rid of them?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We in fact, we review each and every membership application, and when you join, there's a terms of service very clear. It just says, I agree that I have an indoor toilet, cooking facilities, and a gray water tank, or some ability to catch water. And we then ask you to describe your unit. And so we have someone look through each application, and if they don't comply, we issue a refund. So we're not too strong-armed, but we basically say, look, this doesn't work for the program. Here's your money back. But that's important. It's important that we keep our hosts happy.
Yeah. So now talking about your hosts a little bit for me. So you've got 600 plus hosts now. Number one, how are they finding you? Number two, once they do find you, how do they become part of this? And then number three, what can they expect after becoming a member of it?
Yes. So, in the early days, it was hard. It was a lot harder to get hosts. It was manually reaching out and saying, hey, here's this program. We think it'll be good for your business, an opportunity for you to share your products with a really lovely group of people. Now, over time, it's become a bit easier because Harvest Host has a very good reputation. And so now, oftentimes locations reach out to us or they're referred by members. But every once in a while, here's an example. I live in Vail, Colorado, and there's a new distillery down the road that's a really cool location. And so I reached out and said, hey, I'm with this program, Harvest Hosts. We'd love to have you in the program. I'm not going to sell you anymore. Just go Google Harvest Hosts. And once they did that, then they read all the positive reviews. They said, yes, this looks wonderful. So I think now that we have thousands of members and a good reputation, it's easier to convince hosts that it's going to be very good for them and for our members, which is always important.
Very interesting. So you're going after, obviously you have your list of breweries, distilleries, and so forth. Is there any way for private RV parks or public campgrounds, either one of those two, to become a member of Harvest Host in any way?
So we actually have a separate program that I'm working on for traditional campgrounds because, as I mentioned earlier, our goal with Harvest Host is not to replace campgrounds or state parks or national, we're a supplement. We're just a very unique category of experiences, but you certainly couldn't stay with us every single day.
Right.
That would be tough. So
Yeah.
we have a separate program that we're building for traditional campgrounds to try to get some of our members, over there as well. And it's not ready yet, but that'll be our next conversation because I've got something in the works.
Okay, that's very cool. Yeah, I was thinking if you stayed at enough Harvest Hosts and you had to buy wine all the time, you would have a problem driving between the locations after a while. You'd be completely snickered up.
And probably a drinking problem, yeah.
Okay, so it's an absolutely awesome program. Like honestly, I met with the original founders of it. That's how we connected, and then you and I connected just inadvertently over the last few weeks. And I think it's a perfect fit. There's a lot of this. There's a lot of push within the RV industry right now for these sharing, kind of the Airbnb style businesses and RV share and all those type of things. And Harvest Host is different in which you're actually qualifying. You have rules, you have requirements, and there's a few other companies out there that are trying to do this. Oh, well, you can camp anywhere type of thing. So I really like what you're doing because you have rules, you have requirements. You're not building an RV park on land that's not zoned for RV parking. What other things should folks consider if they're looking at Harvest Host as an option? Is there like a trial period that they could do, a test period, or I guess at $49, try it out. You give them their money back after 30 days. I mean, how's that work?
Yeah. No, and in fact, we do. We have a 100% money back guarantee, and it's no questions asked. And so when people ask us, because I will admit it's a little frustrating if you're not a member, you can see all the locations on a map, and you can find out where they are, and you can see what types they are. But we won't tell you their information until you're a member, right? That's the secret sauce for members only. And so we tell people, feel free to join. Look through the the hosts. We have great route planning features. You can search by location. You can search by type. And if you're not satisfied, we're happy to give you the money back. No problem.
Have hosts ever had any issues hosting campers? I mean, it sounds like as long as the campers are clean and, like you said, not peeing in grandma's backyard, it sounds like there's not going to be any issues with the city or police or anything like that. It sounds like it's a really clean operation. Is that true?
It is true. Yes. And that's, and again, that's why we have these rules in place that you mentioned. And in fact, if you go to our website, I encourage people to look at our code of conduct. And that code of conduct, it looks a little verbose, but really it gets to the heart of what it means to be a good RV citizen. And I think when you play by the rules, hosts are happy, and I think members are happy to be good RV citizens. So it's great.
That's awesome. So I'm going to put a link down in the comments of this video or in the description of this video so people can link right over to Harvest Host. Are you going to be at any public events over the next few months where people could actually come out, meet you, and talk, like RV shows or anything like that?
Yes. In fact, I'm heading tomorrow across country to Hershey, Pennsylvania for the big Hershey RV show. And so we will be there. I'm looking at my calendar, the 12th through the 14th. And so
you'll be working up. Are you going to just be roaming around, or do you have a booth there, or what's going on there?
This year I'm going to roam. I'm going to take it all in. I've heard this is my first time. I've heard it's quite a show.
Yeah, it's massive.
So,
yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So I'm going to roam. I'm going to be rocking around with some purple Harvest Host t-shirts and some stickers. So if I find members, I'll hook you guys up.
So what for you? So if we've got, because we obviously have some RV manufacturers who watch your videos and so forth. What other companies would be a good partnership with Harvest Host? Are you looking for any type of partnerships or opportunities like that?
Yes, that's a great question. So we did announce a partnership last week, with My Way. And My Way is part of THL and Thor's travel partnership. And My Way is kind of an Airbnb for RVs, like you mentioned.
Right.
And so between My Way and Harvest Hosts, we can help renters kind of experience the program. But I think there are a lot of good opportunities to partner with manufacturers to, to give either discounted or free memberships to RV buyers. And so we've actually had a couple conversations in the last couple of weeks with some new boutique trailer manufacturers who are excited about giving memberships to their customers, just as a nice thank you, right? Because, to the manufacturer, we might charge them like $30 for a membership, right? So it's nothing compared to the $30,000 unit they're selling. But I think it means a lot to the customer. It's kind of like, hey, here's your camper. Now go out and find some happy trails.
That actually goes, let's go a little bit deeper now, because when you and I first had our conversation, we had a lot in common in kind of our stories, how we got into this space. In my case, my wife and I, we bought our RV 9 years ago, started traveling. We discovered how difficult it was to actually find campgrounds and RV parks in places we didn't know and kind of understand what we're getting into. And that's what drove us into building Campground Views, was this idea that if you see what you want, if you see a video, if you see pictures, you'll be able to decide yes or no, it's right for me. And so our mission, and we had a great discussion on this, and our mission here is to make camping amazing. And we believe by doing that, it helps the industry, it helps campers. It's just an all-around good thing. You don't want to show up at a place you don't want to be at. And obviously the managers and owners of that place don't want you there if you don't want to be there. So there's really kind of the synergy. And in your space and Harvest Host, you're kind of doing something similar. You're kind of creating these amazing little experiences that people can go and find.
I appreciate that. I think we connected on that level, because before I purchased Harvest Hosts, my wife and I had RV'd through all the lower 48 US states over a 2-year period. Had a wonderful time. But our complaint was we were seeing all these really quite majestic farms and vineyards that we wanted to stay on, right? Like we wanted to be on these vistas, and we wanted to make RVing magical. And so I do think that's what we're setting out to try to do. And the other way I put it is I think we're trying to help a lot of people get back to the great American road trip. Back in the 50s, you jump on the road to discover these small town American gems, and that's changed a lot with air travel. And so, Harvest Hosts helps people get back to the real gems of America. I think that's quite wonderful.
Reconnected. Okay. My internet was acting up a little bit. You still got me there?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. So I love that analogy of the Great American Road Trip and allowing people to reconnect. You actually told a story about one of your hosts and how it's just a mom and pop, and through Harvest Host, just the exposure they got, it's kind of helped blow up their small business and their enterprise there. Can you share that story?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I'll give you 2 quick stories. The one you're mentioning was actually this Kansas winery. And so as I was driving through Kansas, which I do quite often, I felt bad that I'd never given Kansas as a state a fair shake, right? I think wide open spaces, not a lot of pretty places, and it wasn't true. And so I went to this winery and I asked them, what's it been like being a member of Harvest Hosts? And they said that because of Harvest Hosts, this year alone, they had 5 weddings booked on their property, which is a property from the 1800s and a barn that was built by, I think, their great-grandfather in 1920. And so it's just this gorgeous barn where they have weddings out back by a pond, and then the reception in the barn. And the whole wedding business, they said, came along because of Harvest Host members coming by, seeing the property, loving it, and then telling their friends.
That's incredible. And that's actually, that's one of the things I love about our side of the business too, is that when you deal with campground owners, RV park owners, RV park operators, I believe that the camping industry is one of the last few small businesses in America where it's primarily family-owned businesses, small businesses, folks who retired and bought these things, and they work hard every day to build these places that people can go. And so on our end, that's a motivation too, is to try to get people into places like that, in the middle of Kansas, in the middle of nowhere, that you would normally fly over or drive right by on the interstate, and suddenly stop in and discover for a second, wait a second, this is an amazing spot. I want to stay here. Yeah. So I love that story.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. I love that. And the other quick story I mentioned was the first Harvest Host location that I ever went to, and it actually made me fall in love with the company. Again, it was in Kansas, and it just by chance happened to be in Kansas. But I found an alpaca farm that was run by 3 nuns, sisters of the Dominican, 3 nuns in their 80s. And I said, this is good. This is too good to be true. I got to check this out. And so I drove off Route 70, about 20 minutes down a dirt road. Felt like I was in the movie Twister. And I arrive at this like huge, like 3,000 acre farm. And this wonderful nun, Imelda, approaches me and welcomes me, gives me a tour of the farm, introduces me to the alpacas, to the chickens, shows me all their hiking trails, and then shows me the gift shop where she was actually a masseuse. The other, one of the other nuns made soaps, and the third one made alpaca scarves and other things with alpaca fur. And it was just delightful. I mean, I was just smitten. And so, I stayed there. I bought some soaps. I bought a scarf for my wife, and just had a wonderful time getting to know the nuns. And so, I mean, I was like, if I hadn't done this, I would have stayed at a campground, which would have been fine, but I would have watched
Yeah.
television, gone to bed early, and woken up to continue my trip. Instead, I got to meet nuns that run an alpaca farm. How cool is that?
That's a beautiful story, and I love that because in my mind, it just completely reframed what Harvest Host is. Really, I'm kind of thinking of, when you're back in college, a lot of people go on these backpacking trips in Europe, and they go to the hostel thing, and they kind of discover the true nature of wherever they're at. And it almost feels like that's what you're creating here in the United States. You're creating this ability for folks to create, to go experience those things. And you're not necessarily drawing them away from campgrounds or RV parks. You're drawing them away from sleeping on the side of the road or in a Walmart, and getting them into some of these more unique locations where they can stay. That's incredible. I love that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And to be fair, the day after it was very hot. And so the next day I went to a campground in Kansas.
Yeah.
I plugged into my 50 amp power, cranked the air conditioner, and had a really nice, relaxing time watching movies. So they go hand in hand. But I think that the nice thing is you can have both. You can kind of get.
You can. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get both.
Yeah. Well, like I can picture, instead of racing, 'cause that's one of the things that we talk a lot about is folks will race to Yellowstone from Southern California, right? And they'll get there as fast as they can, and they might spend some time in national parks and race home. If they have these amazing destinations along the way that can break it up, folks will, you and I are kind of really good examples, right? You're hitting the road tomorrow, but your business doesn't stop. And, I'm actually on the road and my business never stops because we're all digitally connected now. We can actually live this kind of, unique lifestyle and actually travel and experience this country like no generation ever has before. And you're kind of helping connect that and kind of finish that last mile where, hey, instead you can go stay at campgrounds, but if you just need to overnight, you want something unique, here's a really cool option. And at $49, I'm not, and honestly, I'm not getting a cut of this, just straight up. At $49 is cheap. I can see that that's really an easy sell for somebody once they're aware of the program.
It is. Yep. And we keep the price low because we want to encourage people to not give us too much money, but instead give some of it back to the local business. This is really, it's really about supporting the local business. And then in fact, I'm going to create a coupon code right after this interview, campground views altogether, one word, campground views. And so if you sign up using that code, it'll take 10% off. So it'll be $44 a year. And that discount will last. Yeah. Discount for the life of your account.
Wow. That's cool. Thank you. That's our viewers will love that. I'm sure we'll get some signups. So I think we could talk all day long, and I think we'll do more conversations like this because you've been very active. When did you take over running Harvest Host, and was it in the last year or so?
It was. Yep. So I started talking to Don and Kim, the former owners, at the beginning of this year. They're wonderful. They're absolutely delightful. And I approached them and said, look, I love RVing. My wife and I are actual RV enthusiasts. This is not just a business we're trying to make money from. Do you have any interest in selling? Because we would love to kind of take our experience, and my background's in technology, and try to take the program to the next level. And they said, no, we hadn't really thought about selling, but we are excited about retiring if we find the right, buyer and the right price. And so we took a few months to get to know each other, to make sure that they really wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to just come in and destroy what they'd taken 9 years to build. Right. And I respect that. I really respect what they've built. So we officially took control in May, and since then we've been working hard to bring on new hosts, improve the website. So I brought over a couple developers from my last company to rebuild the search functionality, kind of re-engineer the whole website to make it easier to search and find hosts. That's not done yet, by the way, but that's going to be coming out here in the next couple of weeks, which is exciting. Very cool. And then really just building more awareness about Harvest Hosts in general. So we've really turned up our awareness campaigns. which is fun.
Yeah, I've noticed it because I've seen you out a lot more. It's just a great idea. So I appreciate you coming on and explaining more about Harvest Host. And I love the coupon idea. So the coupon is Campground Views. Put it in there, save 10%, and sign up today. And I thank you for your time and have a safe trip back out east. The fall colors are going to be amazing. So I'm kind of jealous of you. So go have fun.
Well, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I mean, I'm jealous of you, out in the Southwest. It's a gorgeous part of the country this time of year. So you have fun.
All right, cool. Thank you, Joel. Talk to you later.